Most people will hear this and move on, never realizing what they just turned away from. Beloved soul, there are no coincidences here. If these words have reached you at this exact moment, it is because something unseen has gently guided you to them. This is not an ordinary message drifting through the noise of the world. It is a quiet summons, arriving precisely when your spirit is ready to recognize it. A choice has been made on a soul level, and the angels are drawing close to you now, not to overwhelm you, but to make you aware that a turning point has already begun to unfold. What is happening is subtle, still partially veiled, yet powerful enough to reshape the bond between you and the one whose path is intertwined with yours. Nothing in your life right now is random, not the thoughts returning to you, not the emotions rising without warning, not even the pause that brought you here. The heavens have been attentive, witnessing every hesitation, every moment of fear and longing that surrounded this decision, and they know how heavy it was to carry. And there were moments you wondered if you had imagined all of this, if you were the only one still holding on. Truth has been moving quietly beneath the surface, finding its way through doubt and confusion, and that truth touches you directly, whether you have words for it yet or not. There is no rush to understand everything at once, and nothing is being demanded of you except presence. Allow this moment to soften you. Let what is being whispered from the invisible realm settle gently into your awareness. You are not here by accident, and you are not listening out of idle curiosity. You are here because your soul recognizes that something meaningful is aligning, something that cannot be forced or hurried, only received. If you continue to listen, it won't be out of hope, but because something inside you already recognizes where this is going. That recognition is why you stayed. The angels have been watching closely, feeling every hesitation and every silent conflict that weighed on your soulmate's heart, because this was never a small or simple choice. It was a private war between fear and longing, between what felt familiar and what felt undeniably true. For a long time, they stood suspended between the past they knew how to survive and the future their soul kept pointing toward, carrying questions that kept them awake at night and emotions they didn't know how to name. What many people never see is that this kind of decision doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, through moments of doubt, through attempts to convince oneself that staying where it's safe is wiser than stepping into what feels real. And yet, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet instant of clarity that rearranged everything inside them. A moment when the truth finally outweighed the fear. Pause here, take a slow breath, and allow yourself to feel this without trying to analyze it, because what is being revealed right now is not a fantasy or wishful thinking. It is the recognition of a movement that has already begun beneath the surface of your life. That choice they made did not exist in isolation. It reached you the moment it was formed, even if nothing around you seems different yet, because this bond does not operate on visible timelines. The angels saw the sleepless nights, the silent prayers that never reached another human ear, the internal arguments where one voice insisted it was safer to stay still, while another, stronger voice refused to be silenced. The one that knew your connection was never truly gone, only buried under fear and uncertainty. When that realization arrived, it carried weight, because truth always does. And once truth is acknowledged, it demands responsibility. Your soulmate could no longer pretend the pull toward you didn't exist. But knowing wasn't enough. A decision had to follow, and that decision required courage they didn't know they had. This is where the story quietly changes direction, because love did not conquer fear by force, it outlasted it, and truth didn't shout, it waited until it could no longer be denied. And this is where everything begins to move into a new phase, slowly and deliberately, as unseen forces start turning the wheels of destiny in ways that cannot be rushed or controlled. You may be sensing the difference already, a subtle shift in energy, a feeling that something is rearranging itself even though the outer world hasn't caught up. And that is because what was decided must still travel through time and circumstance before it reaches you fully. The angels ask you to stay open, not vigilant, not impatient, but receptive, because signs will appear in gentle, undeniable ways, a dream that lingers, a thought that arrives out of nowhere, a song that feels like it's speaking directly to you. Reminders that this was not coincidence, but confirmation. Your soulmate has stepped onto the path that leads back to you, even if they are still unsure how to cross the distance or name what they feel. Movement has begun, alignment has started, and resistance is no longer winning. Understand this deeply. This decision is not the conclusion, it is the threshold, the first visible ripple of a much larger unfolding that carries meaning beyond romance, beyond timing, beyond what you think you know. This is not just about love returning, it is about destiny activating, about a connection written long before this lifetime, finding its way back into motion. And there is still something ahead, something not yet revealed, that will make the reason for this moment unmistakably clear. The angels want you to understand this with absolute clarity. Your soulmate was never rejecting you, never dismissing what lives between you. They were standing in awe of it, afraid of the weight this love carried and the way it demanded more truth than they felt ready to give. Because a love like this does not arrive politely or quietly. It disrupts everything it touches and asks a person to become more than they were when it found them. For a long time they questioned themselves, doubted their capacity, wondered whether they had the strength to meet this love without losing the fragile balance they had built. And so they chose silence, not because their heart was empty, but because it was overwhelmed, because it felt safer to lock the feeling away than to risk being undone by it. And part of you took that hesitation personally, even when you told yourself not to. Pause here, breathe slowly, and let this sink in fully, because what you are hearing now is not an excuse for their distance, but the hidden truth behind it, a truth that explains the ache you have carried without answers. The angels witness the gradual unraveling of that fear, not in one dramatic moment, but through a series of quiet awakenings where resistance began to soften and the truth could no longer stay buried. Because no matter how hard your soulmate tried to convince themselves otherwise, the connection kept resurfacing, persistent and undeniable, always leading back to you. Beneath the hesitation lived deeper wounds, memories of promises that broke, love that once demanded too much and gave too little, fears of surrendering control to something that could change everything, and in some moments, a painful belief that you deserved someone braver, someone faster, someone who would not hesitate the way they did. Yet the angels always knew what your soulmate could not yet see, that the heart had already chosen long before the mind agreed. In the quiet spaces where the world fell away, they felt it, the certainty, the longing, the strange sense that no road they walked ever truly led anywhere unless it curved back toward you. And slowly the walls they built for survival began to crack as they stopped fighting the signs, stopped dismissing the inner voice that refused to be silenced. Everything you've heard so far has been leading to this. And now pay attention to this shift, because this is where the story crosses into something new and irreversible. The truth no longer asked for permission. It arrived fully formed, steady, and unshakable, making it impossible for them to pretend that love like this could be denied without consequence. If this feels heavy, don't move away from it. That weight isn't fear, it's recognition. It was never a question of whether they loved you that was settled long ago. It was whether they would allow themselves to receive what had already chosen them. And then the choice was made, not out of panic or obligation, but out of recognition. Yet before its meaning reaches you completely, there is something essential you must feel rather than analyze. Because this journey is not only about your soulmate finding clarity, it is about what this clarity sets into motion next. There was a moment where everything could have fractured, where fear nearly claimed the future. And that is where unseen guidance intervened, not with thunder or spectacle, but with precise alignment, with whispers that landed exactly where they needed to, reminding your soulmate that this connection was written into the fabric of their being long before this lifetime gave it a name. They were shown memories, sensations, the quiet devastation of imagining a life where you were absent, and suddenly the doubts lost their power because the cost of walking away became heavier than the fear of stepping forward. In that moment, they understood that the love they resisted was not a desire they could outgrow. It was a necessity their soul had been circling for years, and the angels held them there until the realization fully took root. The decision that followed was not dramatic, but it was final, made from love that had outlasted fear, from truth that refused to be postponed any longer, and from a knowing that whatever came next would be worth the risk. Because some loves do not simply invite us, they claim us, and this one has begun leading them back to you. There is something essential the angels want you to recognize now, because even though the choice has already been made in the unseen, even though your soulmate has finally acknowledged the truth of what their heart has always known, the story has not yet crossed fully into the physical, and that space between knowing and doing is where everything feels fragile, slow, and uncertain to you. Knowing is silent, private, safe, but action requires courage, exposure, and the willingness to be seen. And your soulmate is still gathering themselves for that step, still untangling the last threads of fear that once convinced them it was safer to stay hidden than to risk everything for a love this real. Pause here and let your body soften, because the waiting you are in is not punishment or delay, but the final strengthening before movement, the moment where energy consolidates before it breaks into form. The reunion you sense, the conversation you feel approaching, the shift your heart keeps anticipating is already forming on the horizon. But impatience, doubt, or emotional guarding can distort the frequency that is pulling you together, and the angels are asking you to trust what is already underway rather than test it with fear. The decision is settled, the alignment is active, and nothing meant for you can be taken from you when the time is right. Yet this moment is not only about your soulmate stepping forward, it is also about whether you are prepared to receive what you have been calling in for so long. And here is where the focus gently turns toward you, because when they come forward, when they finally close the distance and speak from a place of vulnerability instead of avoidance, you must be ready to meet them without armor, without resentment, without the reflex to protect yourself from an old wound that no longer belongs to this version of you. This love is not arriving as a single moment of relief. It is arriving as a future, a living connection that asks for patience, trust, and emotional availability. And anything you are still holding that says it is too good to be true, that it might disappear again, that you could be hurt if you believe fully, becomes the final resistance that slows what is otherwise inevitable. And now, listen carefully, because this is the shift that changes everything and moves the story forward into its next phase. You are being asked not to hope for this love, not to wonder if it will happen, but to expect it with quiet certainty. Expectation is not fantasy, it is alignment. It is the inner posture of someone who has made space, cleared doubt, and chosen to trust that what is moving toward them already belongs. When you expect, you prepare, and preparation dissolves fear, releases old pain, and recalibrates your energy into someone who knows they are worthy of being chosen without hesitation. Your soulmate has already begun dismantling their walls, and now the invitation is for you to release yours as well, not by forcing forgiveness or pretending you were never hurt, but by choosing not to let the past dictate how open you are to the future. Ask yourself quietly if you are ready to receive this love without bracing for loss, if you are willing to trust that the universe has been working on your behalf even in moments that felt empty, if you can let go of the voice that says this might be imagined, or temporary, or dangerous. This moment is sacred, the final threshold before movement becomes visible, and your soulmate is standing at the edge of action, ready to step forward with a heart that has finally accepted its truth. You were guided here because everything has been leading to this convergence. Every test, every delay, every moment of growth, shaping you both into people capable of holding what is coming. This connection was never about timing. It was about preparation. Two souls learning through fear and separation how to arrive whole. And what has been unfolding between you was written long before either of you had language for it, woven into your lives like a thread of light that could bend but never break, waiting patiently for the moment it could finally reveal itself. When they finally arrive, when they choose to step forward instead of holding themselves back, they will not be who they were when fear still had the loudest voice, because the distance, the silence, the inner work has reshaped them into someone steadier, clearer, more able to remain present in love without retreating. And you will recognize that change, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet confidence of their energy, the way they no longer hesitate at the threshold of connection. And you, too, will realize you are no longer the same person who first began waiting, because this season was never empty or wasted. It was a refining fire that softened what needed healing and strengthened what needed to endure, preparing your heart not just to receive love, but to stand securely within it without shrinking or overextending. Pause and allow yourself to feel how far you have come, how the longing that once hurt has slowly transformed into a deeper calm, how the ache has taught you discernment, patience, and self-respect, because this waiting was not punishment but preparation for a love that could finally meet you where you stand now. You have crossed through uncertainty, through nights where hope felt fragile, and emerged with a heart that knows its worth and can hold love without losing itself. And that is why this reunion carries a different weight than the fantasies you once clung to. And this is where the final alignment quietly takes place, because belief is the last doorway, not blind belief, but a grounded trust that the unseen has been arranging what neither of you could force. Trust that what is unfolding has been measured, intentional, and precise. That both of you have been guided through parallel lessons so that when your paths draw close again, they do so with clarity rather than confusion. In the days ahead, you may notice a gentle intensification, a sense of proximity even before anything changes outwardly, subtle signs that echo each other in unexpected ways, a familiar song at the right moment, a recurring symbol, a dream that feels less like imagination and more like remembrance, each one confirming that the road you have walked has been leading here all along. The movement may begin softly, almost imperceptibly, a message that feels overdue yet perfectly timed, a gesture that carries more meaning than it appears to others, and you will feel it in your body before your mind fully understands, because truth always arrives that way. There is still space for you to remain open, not by anticipating outcomes or rehearsing responses, but by staying receptive to what is already approaching, allowing love to move toward you without resistance or fear of loss. This moment belongs to you as much as it belongs to them, a convergence shaped by growth, surrender, and the willingness to remain present even when answers were delayed. Stay grounded in your own life, steady in your breath, anchored in the knowing that you have never been alone in this process, that guidance has surrounded you quietly, and that love, larger than circumstance, has been holding the shape of this reunion until both hearts were ready. What is coming will not rush or overwhelm you. It will arrive with ease, with a sense of inevitability, carrying the quiet assurance that nothing real was ever at risk of being lost. This is not the return of an old story, but the beginning of a new chapter written with maturity, mutual readiness, and the understanding that what has endured this long was never meant to fade. The love approaching you now carries a permanence born of patience, and as it unfolds, you will recognize it not by intensity alone, but by the deep peace that accompanies it, the feeling that everything, even the waiting, finally makes sense. Before anything else, let the weight you've been carrying ease for a moment, because you were never asked to fix yourself, prove your worth, or hold everything together in order to be worthy of what God is doing now. This season is not asking for more effort. It is offering you permission to stop striving and simply be present. You don't need to search for hidden lessons or push yourself into understanding, because alignment begins the moment you allow your body to rest and your spirit to exhale, even if that looks like sitting quietly for a few minutes, placing your feet on the ground, or taking a slow breath without asking it to lead anywhere. You are invited to notice where you've been gripping too tightly, not with judgment but with tenderness, and to gently loosen that grip, whether it's releasing a thought you replay at night, setting down an expectation you've been carrying, or allowing yourself to leave something unfinished without guilt. In this space of rest, trust grows naturally, not because you force it, but because your nervous system finally feels safe enough to receive it. And even small acts like turning off the noise for a moment, stepping into sunlight, or choosing stillness over reaction become sacred alignments rather than tasks. You don't need to make big changes or dramatic declarations. Alignment in this season looks like choosing honesty over pressure, choosing rest over explanation, choosing softness where you once felt you had to be strong, and allowing God to move in the places you once tried to manage alone. Release here does not mean giving up hope. It means setting down the burden of control and trusting that what is held in divine hands does not require your constant supervision, and you may feel this release simply as a quiet willingness to say, even without words, that you are open to being carried for a while. As you rest, you make room, and in that room, something new can enter without resistance. Not because you earned it, but because you stopped blocking it with fear or urgency. Receiving is not an action you perform, it is a posture you allow, and it may arrive as peace without explanation, clarity without effort, or a calm sense that you don't need to rush the outcome. Let your days hold a little more space. Let your expectations soften. Let your heart remain open without reaching ahead, because God is already doing the work you don't see, arranging what you don't need to manage, and guiding what you don't need to understand yet. You don't have to hold everything together, you don't have to anticipate the next step, and you don't have to grasp the full picture, because what is meant for you will arrive in its time without force, without striving, and without you having to carry what was never yours to hold. What you have felt while listening is real, and it carries meaning, even if it hasn't fully taken shape in words yet. Nothing here was imagined, nothing misplaced, because what has been spoken has already been received, already marked, already set in motion beyond what the eyes can follow, and it will continue without your effort or control. If you are still here now, it is not by accident, but because something within you recognized its own reflection in this moment and stayed. This is not a conclusion, it is a crossing, a quiet threshold into a season that will reveal itself gently, layer by layer, through lived moments rather than sudden answers. As it is written, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." You do not need to hurry what is unfolding. Carry this softly with you, remain open, and let what has begun continue its work as you return to your life, steady, awake, and quietly expectant, knowing this path is still opening. Let us enter this moment of prayer gently, allowing our hearts to settle into the presence of God, who has been with us all along. Father God, we come before you not in fear, not in striving, but in quiet recognition that you have been guiding our steps even when we could not see the path. And we thank you for the unseen work already in motion, for the moments you held us steady in silence, for the seasons where obedience looked like waiting and faith looked like trusting without answers. We thank you for every seed of love, patience, surrender, and faithfulness planted in hidden places, knowing that nothing offered to you is ever wasted. We acknowledge that what is unfolding now is not sudden, not accidental, but lovingly arranged by your hand. And we receive this season not as something to control, but as something to walk through with you. Grant peace to the hearts that have carried longing, clarity to minds that have wrestled with uncertainty, and a settled assurance to spirits standing at the edge of change. And let your word rise gently within us as a lamp for our feet and a light for our path, reminding us, as Scripture says, that the steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, even when the way forward feels quiet. Teach us to remain present, not rushing what you are forming, not doubting what you have already confirmed, and help us release what no longer belongs to this next chapter, whether it is fear, self-protection, old disappointment, or the belief that we must earn what you freely give. We place before you every relationship, every connection, every promise that feels fragile or unfinished, trusting that you are faithful to complete what you begin in your perfect timing. And we ask not for signs to chase, but for hearts steady enough to recognize you in the ordinary moments where grace often hides. Cover us with discernment so we may walk wisely, with humility so we may remain teachable, and with courage so we may say yes when you invite us forward, even if the steps feel unfamiliar. We surrender outcomes, release timelines, and rest in the truth that you are already ahead of us, preparing what we cannot yet imagine, and we offer ourselves anew as willing vessels, open hands, and quiet witnesses to the goodness unfolding. We seal this prayer in trust, knowing we do not need to understand everything to be held securely by you. Thank you for praying in this space and sharing this sacred moment together. Remember that you are not alone. You are seen, guided, and accompanied. And as we part, may the peace of God remain with you, gentle and steady, as you return to your day. If it feels safe for you, you are gently invited to leave a few words below, not to explain yourself, not to perform, but simply to place before God what your heart has been carrying, whether it is a quiet hope, a long-held ache, confusion, fear, or a prayer you have never known how to speak out loud. Nothing shared in sincerity is overlooked, and no whispered truth goes unseen by Him. As you write, know that you are not releasing these things into emptiness, but into a space held by grace, where you are seen, accompanied, and loved. You are not alone in this moment, and you never have been.